Hey everyone! So today I thought I would come on here and share my birth story of my firstborn son. I love watching other people's birth stories and I find them so interesting and you can learn so much. So I thought I would share my birth story. It's actually a long time coming because my son is going to be 3 in about 2.5 months. So it's been a while. I want to go ahead and get this filmed because I am actually currently pregnant. I will be 29 weeks pregnant tomorrow. So I definitely want to get this filmed before I have my next child and then forget everything that happened or mix up the two birth stories. So yes, I've been sharing this story obviously for almost 3 years now with everyone, but I've never actually sat down and written it out or typed it out or filmed myself sharing the story. So I wanted to go ahead and actually do that. So I ended up actually having a natural medication-free birth. So I ended up actually giving birth in a birthing center that is run by midwives. It is a birthing center that is located inside a hospital. So let's get into the actual birth story. So I had been having I had been having Braxton Hicks contractions for a while. They were never painful, never, anything like that. So I had been getting a little crampy a few days leading up to when I went into labor, but nothing serious. There were signs like my stomach had definitely dropped, the baby had dropped. So I figured I was getting close to time, but you never know when your body's going to decide to go into labor, your baby's going to decide. So actually, my son his due date was August 18th, 2015. And we also, side note, we did not find out the sex of our baby. We were leaving it a surprise until the child was born. So on the morning of me being 40 weeks pregnant, I had gotten up and it was at 7:47. I was just standing by my bed and I had a contraction and it was painful. Nothing serious, no serious pain, but it was definitely different than the Braxton Hicks contractions I'd been feeling, because the Braxton Hicks contractions were just a tightening more in my stomach, and it would be kind of like a funny shape, but there was never any pain associated. There was some pressure and tightness, but never any pain whatsoever. So this was definitely pain. There was something different going on. I could just tell that it was different. So I went ahead right then and started timing my contractions. So it was 10 minutes later, almost on the dot, I had another contraction. 10 minutes later, had another contraction. Each one of these was slightly painful. The best way I can explain it was that they were, kind of like a period cramp, but the whole stomach does get tight. And that time, they weren't lasting super long. They were only 30 seconds long, and they were about 10 minutes apart. So I said we started at 7:47, so around 8 a.m. on August 18th. So the morning of August 18th, which was a Tuesday. So I timed them for a little bit. I'm pretty sure I told my mom right away that I think I might be in labor. My husband had already gone to work, so he was already at work at this time. So I was just home alone, and so I think at probably around 10 o'clock in the morning, I ended up calling my husband and saying, so I've been having contractions for 10 minutes apart since, before 8 o'clock. But I said, I think that everything is going to be going on like this for a while. So you can come home if you want, whenever you want. I'm fine now. I don't need you here yet. So, you decide what you want to do. And he had decided, well, I'm going to stay at work and work a little while. And then the next thing I know, he was pulling up into the driveway. So, I guess what happened is, we called the midwife, about the time. So in the 10 o'clock hour, we called the midwives and let them know that I was pretty sure I was in labor, and they confirmed that did sound like labor. And my midwife said that it would probably be like this for the next 24 hours before anything really started happening. So, I was kind of bummed about that because how cool is it to think like I'm gonna have my baby the day of the due date right at 40 weeks, but that didn't happen, spoiler alert. So really the next 24 hours was pretty laid back. So that night I did try to get some rest, but it really didn't happen. I mean, I'm telling you, the contractions were nothing painful. They were just more of like an ow, ow, that hurts kind of pain. I mean, definitely I was in a good mood. I could walk around, I could talk, all that, but I could not sleep. I mean, I'm a light sleeper anyways, and I would try to go to sleep, but I would maybe start to doze off, but then every time a contraction started, I would wake up. So I didn't get a lot of sleep. So around the 24-hour mark, so around 8 a.m., I think my contractions actually got further apart during this time. They were more like 7 to 13 minutes apart instead of 7 to 10 minutes apart. So we had still been in contact with the midwives. I don't know if they called us or we called them. I think they called us to see how I was doing and progressing and everything. And they decided to, everything from my end was like, it's just going, nothing really seems to be changing. So they did have me come in just so they could check me, see what they thought, see how they thought I was progressing and all that. So we drive to the birthing center, and that was probably around 11 a.m. So that's at the 27-hour mark of being in labor. So we go to the birthing center, they check me, and I think I was 4 centimeters dilated and 50% effaced. So I still had a long way to go. And just as a side note, it is really not helpful to know, at least personally, I don't believe it's helpful to know how dilated you are. You could be dilated for weeks before you even go into labor. So that's not a true telling of when you're going to go into labor or how much longer labor is going to last. So as you will soon find out, that doesn't mean anything. So I was I said 4 centimeters. So they were like, you're probably gonna be doing this for a while longer still. So they had us leave, and we're gonna come back in an hour or two for them to check to see if that was the case, if I really was just progressing very slowly still. So we left, and we just went to a park, and we went to go get food, but I actually ended up I don't even think I got out of the car because I was so nervous. I didn't even realize this was a fear until I was in labor, but I was so nervous that my water was going to break in public, and I did not want to be out walking around other people. And honestly, if I'd been out walking around, that probably would have helped instead of just sitting in the car for a couple hours. But I did not want to be around other people while I was in labor. When my mom and my husband went in to go get a couple sandwiches or something, I just did not feel like eating. And while they were inside and I was by myself in the car, my contractions did start to get more painful. It was more of a toe curling pain. You just okay, that's really hurting. And so I'm trying to breathe through those. But that is something that I really struggled with, and with that first pregnancy in general, I've just always had a problem with breathing, when I'm working out or anything, exercising. I tend to hold my breath when it's the hardest part, when you're supposed to be exhaling. So that's something that this time around I've been working really hard on. Doing yoga has helped me a lot with practicing breathing. And I hope that this time around I will be much better, more prepared, because I of course took all the classes and learned all the different positions and learned all the different ways to deal with the pain. But once the pain started getting bad, I kind of just forgot everything. So I knew something was happening. So I guess during this time, I don't know if I was still considered early labor or active labor. I guess I was probably maybe transitioning more into active labor at this time. But anyways, we went back to the midwives probably around 1 o'clock, and they checked me, and I hadn't progressed at all. I was still sitting at the same, like 4 centimeters and everything. So they said, you know, go home and try to get some rest, because the birthing center, they really, you know, doing things with, especially with midwives and everything, they want you to feel comfortable and not, they want you to be laboring at home in an environment that you're comfortable in. So they tend to have you wait longer before you come in to actually be like admitted and finish laboring there. So their like rule, I guess, is to be your contractions to be 2 to 3 minutes apart for 2 to 3 hours. So, you know, that was I was not anywhere near that yet. So yeah, they sent me home. I felt fine about it. We felt fine about it, because it's obviously I was still gonna be doing this for a while. So we go home, and I guess I should say the birthing center is probably about 20-25 minutes away from my house if it's not rush hour. So if it's not rush hour, I am in the metropolitan area of St. Louis, so it does get busy during rush hour, which we'll get back to that in a little bit. So we go home, and I'm going to try to rest. The midwives actually told me I could take a Benadryl if I wanted to help me, you know, get tired and be able to go to sleep. And I did that to try to get tired, and Benadryl definitely does make me drowsy. So my mom went in her room so she could go take a nap, and my husband got in bed with me because we're like, well, we'll just all get some rest. And then all of a sudden, everything changed. All of a sudden, I am having super intense contractions that are lasting, I mean, close to a minute, if not longer. They're all of a sudden about 2 minutes, 2-3 minutes apart. Super intense, like I said. They are like wrapping around from my back to my stomach. I actually had a problem with my sacrum, and I had low back issues the entire pregnancy, and could not lay flat on my back at all. Like, it was very painful. Now I see a chiropractor and do yoga to try to prevent that. So hopefully this time around it will be much better. But so during this, I had this terrible pain in my back that didn't go away. It was just there. So then when a contraction came, it was just so much more intense and painful. So that was really challenging. So I tried to stay in bed, but I couldn't sit still. I had to be moving. I tried to turn like backwards on the bed and put my arms up, but I just, like I said, I couldn't sit still. So that kind of sucked that I had taken a Benadryl, because now I'm tired, but I can't sit still. I can't sleep. So we get up and I just start doing laps around our house, because I just can't sit still, and the pain is getting very intense. I hate to say pain, but really that's what I felt. So like, we had just, you know, come from the midwives or from the birthing center, and now I'm walking around, and so it's clear to me now that I am in fact in active labor. So active labor, for those who are having their first child, usually lasts 4 to 8 hours. So again, I'm assuming I'm going to be this way for a while. But that's not what happened. So I very quickly move on from active labor into transition, which is the transition between active labor and needing to push. I didn't realize that this was the case at the time. I had no idea, because, you know, they just got so painful. I'm trying to do everything. My husband is helping me do all the positions we learned. Like, he's doing like the counter pressure on my back and the squeezing of my hips, and doing like the slow dancing move, so you like wrap your arms around their neck and just sway. And it's helping, but nothing is really helping. So, and then I just get super nauseated. My husband tried to make me food, and I couldn't eat. And so I had like peppermint essential oil that I was inhaling, trying to calm the nausea. And then I am standing there like I'm almost in tears, because it's just getting so intense. And I 100% knew I did not want an epidural. That was not an option. Like, not even, no. But in in my head, I remember thinking, this must be when people decide to get an epidural, or this is when they do ask about it. And I totally don't blame them, because this is intense. And the thing is that I was way past epidural time at that point, because I had entered transition, because all of those were symptoms of being in transition. So I was not in active labor for probably even an hour, and all of a sudden I'm transitioning. So it is very intense. So we end up calling the midwives finally and saying, it's reared up, something more is happening. And I was a first time mom, and they see hundreds of births, and so I'm sure they know and assume, and they saw me earlier, they know how slow I was going. So I think they thought I'm still going to have a while. So they did say, if you want, you can go ahead and come on in, and we'll have a bath ready for you, and you can start laboring here. So, okay, we decide we're going to go and do that. So we get everything together, and this is where the fun part starts. The real fun part starts. So I had to go pee before we leave. And, okay, so here's a kind of, story to tell. Kind of embarrassing, but whatever. So, I had, no fears about having natural birth. I was super positive my entire pregnancy about it, and I was just, so determined to have this natural birth. But the one fear I had, which has nothing to do with having a natural birth or not, is that I was so afraid that I was going to poop while I was pushing. And I had some problems, which many people tend to do, have problems with getting constipated and being regular during the pregnancy. And I'd actually gotten that under control, so I was regular. But I had not actually pooped since I was in labor, so I hadn't pooped that day or the day before. So that was kind of in the back of my head, uh-oh. So anyway, so I go pee. And I'm sitting there on the toilet, and there was a shift in me because I finished peeing, and I was just sitting on the toilet, kind of dazed, not focusing on anything. And my mom actually said, Robyn, are you okay? And I was like, yeah. So then I stood up, and then all of a sudden I had the urge to poop. So I was actually kind of excited, because I was like, wait, I need to poop, because I didn't want to poop while I was pushing. So apparently that's not what that was. It was not poop. So immediately once I said that, my mom and my husband were like, oh, no, we have to go now. We have to get to the birthing center now. So now I was in stage 2, pushing. And then, it just, after we got in the car, and then, I had to push. So that's very scary. So, we knew we had at least a 20-25 minute drive to the hospital. Of course, I did not want to have my child in our car. So that was scary already. And when you have to push, you have to push. There's nothing you can do to stop it. I was trying with all my might to squeeze, which probably ended up doing damage down there later, as far as my muscles and everything. So it was very intense. But what I will say is that, I think I've said intense a million times in this video, but it's so intense. All these parts of labor are super intense. I am kind of grateful now that I was in the pushing stage while in the car, because I was hurting so much, and I said I couldn't sit still before when I was in transition, that I can't even imagine what that would have been like, trying to sit in the car and drive for however long. Because once I needed to push, the contractions were not as painful. They were much more spread out. There was much more time in between to take a rest, but I just had to push, which was scary. So anyways, the time it was about 3:40, 3:45, something like that. I have no idea what time it was, to be honest. But, you know, in the late 3 o'clock hour is what I would say it was, which means rush hour. So when we got on the first highway, it really wasn't actually that bad. So my husband was just in the fast lane, going like 80 miles an hour. You know, nothing too crazy. He wanted to drive us there safely. He wanted to get there safely. So we were driving, you know, like 80, 85 miles an hour with our flashers on. But then we had to get on to another highway. If you're familiar with the St. Louis area, it was Highway 270. When we take the exit to get onto 270, it is a parking lot. All you see are brake lights. And I still get anxiety every time I take that exit, because I just was like, I'm having this baby in the car. Like, how are we going to get to the hospital? You know, how is this going to happen? There's nowhere to drive. But my husband, he is very good at driving, and he got on the shoulder of the road. Of course, we set our flashers on and everything, and thankfully there was nothing in the on the shoulder. You know, there's always like a broken down car or a bumper or a tire, something. There was nothing. There was nothing on the shoulder. So we're going about 30 miles an hour, 30, 40 miles an hour down the shoulder, past all the other cars. And yeah, people even like got out of our way, like when we were like crossing exits and everything. So we ended up getting there in a very good amount of time. We had to run like one stoplight once we got like off the highway. But it didn't take us that long to get there, thankfully. So I still needed to push by the time we got there. So my husband pulled up to the Circle Drive, got me a wheelchair, and they wheeled me into the birthing center. So, you know, talking to the nurses and midwives, the last they knew is that things are picking up, but I'm probably still going to be laboring for a while. So in hindsight, it probably would have been a good idea for one of us to have called the birthing center to say, hey, I'm pushing. Because once we got there, they were not ready for the fact that I needed to push. I felt really bad, actually. We got there, and I actually was Group B strep positive, which means I needed to get antibiotics. So I was supposed to get 2 doses of antibiotics before I had the baby. There was no time for that. They did hook me up and get the IV in, but I felt so bad because the midwife was rushing so much to try to get this in. Luckily, I don't have a problem with needles, so it didn't bother me. But they checked me, and I was 8 centimeters, so I wasn't even fully dilated, but I needed to push. So my husband, he came in with me and then left to go park the car. And the amount of time it took him to park the car, I had actually become fully dilated by that point. So I was then 10 centimeters dilated in just a matter of minutes. So I needed to push. There was really no time to try to find the optimal birthing position. So I ended up just getting on the bed, and so I just stayed on the bed. So I ended up turning around backwards on the bed. So I had my arms propped up. So basically on all fours, I had my arms propped up on pillows. So I was in that kind of a pushing stance, and they told me to start pushing. So I did. Whenever I'd have a contraction, I would start pushing. But like I said, I had some trouble with the breathing and all that. And so during this time, because it's like 4 o'clock, okay, this is, when people are starting to get off work and new people are starting to come in. So everyone was in this hospital, like in the birthing center. All of the nurses, all of the midwives, which there were 2, but they were both there. So many nurses. The director of the person who created the birthing center was also there, and she was like my angel, because she came up to my head and had me focus on her eyes and helped me, and she helped me really know when to push and when to focus. Just help me focus, which was the big thing I needed to do to start pushing. So things were going on. I was pushing, and then I feel a huge pop, and then like intense pressure. And so I thought that was the baby's head. Turns out it was my water breaking, which I, by this point, completely forgotten the fact that my water had not even broken yet. So it was my water breaking, and then things got so intense. So I started having the ring of fire that you might hear about when your baby is about to come out. So it was, I did start kind of thinking like, I can't do this. This is not going to happen. I can't get this baby out, which is how you know when you're close. When you start thinking, oh, I'm done. I'm just going to go home. I can't do this. Like, I'll try another time. That's when you know that you are super close. So, I'm thinking I can't do it. It hurts so much. But the midwife said, you are so close. Like, you're almost done. And I'm the type of person, which is another reason why telling me how far dilated I am is not helpful, and I will not be finding out this time how far dilated I am at any point. I don't see a need for cervical checks at all during my pregnancy, and I will have one. I talked to the midwives about it, and we decided I will have one cervical check when I arrive with this child in labor, but they are not going to tell me how far along I am or anything like that, unless they need to tell me. So I wanted to know exactly what that meant when they said I'm almost done. So I was like, no, I need to know how much time I have. And they said, within 10 minutes, a couple more pushes. So I was like, okay. So then in my head, I'm like, I have to do this. Like this, it's just something just switched again, and I'm like, I have to get this baby out. Like, it has to come out. So I need to get it out. Gotta do it. There's not much I can do about it. Like, I've just gotta get it out. So I start pushing hard through the pain because I've gotta get it out. So then the head comes out. Right away, the head is out, and so then I guess the midwife said to give a little push to get the rest of the baby out. I just heard push, and so I give a super powerful push, and the baby comes flying out. And something I didn't say is that I did say that we didn't find out the sex of our baby, but my husband we had planned on him catching the baby. So he was down on the business end, getting ready to catch the baby, and when he did, he had to like curl himself around the baby because I pushed too hard, and he almost didn't catch the baby, which would have been fine if he hadn't. I was like 3 inches from the bed. But yeah, so he did catch the baby, and it was just like a super beautiful moment because we didn't know the sex. So we had a name picked out for a boy and a girl. So he got to introduce the baby to me. So he got to say, "Meet Jack." So then, of course, hearing the name Jack, I knew that it was a boy. So they gave me the baby, and then I got turned around and was holding the baby. I did then deliver. Well, they waited until the cord stopped pulsing, and my husband cut the umbilical cord, and then I needed to deliver the placenta, which isn't the most comfortable thing, that's for sure. And they're like pushing on your stomach and everything. So that is pretty uncomfortable, but you have a baby, so it doesn't really matter, and you don't really remember exactly what you felt during that time. They did end up giving me a shot of Pitocin because I was bleeding a lot, so they didn't want me to hemorrhage, so they did go ahead and give me some Pitocin to stop the bleeding. But yeah, it went well. My mom had been in the room with me, and then it's funny, I guess we had called my husband's parents to say that we were on our way to the hospital. So they were like thinking they have time to take their time to get to the birthing center. So they had like just gotten to the hospital, like to the birthing center, and one of the nurses came in and said that there were people here to see us. So it was, I guess, kind of funny for my husband because like right after the baby was born, he got to go out and say, "Do you want to meet your grandson?" which they were completely shocked because they were like, what? Completely just thought that I was still going to be in labor, not that I delivered him already. So they came in, I'm pretty sure the nurses and everything, they all left, like midwives left us alone, and so they got to hold their grandson for the first time. Then a little bit later they all left to go get food for us, and so we had some time alone. And then at some point after that, the midwives did come in, or the nurses came in and, you know, just checked the baby and everything to make sure he was doing well and weighed him. He was 6 pounds 3 ounces. So I ended up actually delivering him at 4:52 p.m. So I mean, active labor to the time he was out was about 3 hours, if that. So that time went very quickly after going very slowly. So then we, because I was group B strep positive, their recommendation was that you stay in the birthing center. At that time it was stay there for 12 hours, but that ended up being perfect because of the time I gave birth around 5 o'clock. So we were able to eat, and then basically we got to go to bed and wake up and go home. It was perfect. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. We went home, and the rest is history. So I also wanted to add that I did end up tearing. I had a first-degree tear in my inner labia, but it really wasn't that big of a deal. The midwife stitched me up. I guess she numbed it first, so like really that part was not a big deal at all, and really it healed fine. So that is, I'm really thankful for that. I think I tore because I was pushing so hard, and I only pushed for 20 minutes or something, so it was very quick. And the other negative thing that happened is because I hadn't eaten since like the night before. I just was like too nervous with what was going on to eat during the day, and then I got nauseated later and just didn't ever get any more food in me. And then I also lost quite a bit of blood. I didn't hemorrhage, like I mentioned, but I still did lose quite a bit of blood, and I got extremely shaky, which I don't think that actually had anything to do with it. I think that's pretty common to get really shaky afterwards. But when I got up to go pee, the nurse helped me go pee, and when I got into the bathroom and sat on the toilet, I got extremely close to passing out. I've never passed out before, so it was pretty scary. But my vision just went completely like tunnel vision, and I could just see, there was just this tiniest little hole that I could see through. Everything else was just black. And so I told the nurse this, and she could see it, and she pushed my head down between my legs very quickly and started dumping cold water on me to try to help me not pass out, and it worked. So after that, I got back in bed, and they got me something to eat. So yes, that was the only negative parts, but other than that, I was doing great and the baby was doing great, so it was all around just a really positive experience. So I'm super thankful for how everything went, and I cannot wait to see what happens for this next one. I definitely want to try to get to the birthing center a little bit sooner this time and have time to actually enjoy the birthing center, because it's actually quite nice. And I think I'll be more prepared this time, knowing when I need to, or when I'm actually transitioning, from early labor to active labor to transition and then on to pushing. I'll actually know what those feel like this time. And I think I'll be able to manage my breathing a lot better this time. So hopefully it'll go even better, because it really was a great positive experience. So I really hope this time goes at least just as well, but I really think it's going to go better this time, even with number 2. So it's exciting that I'll be having another baby in 2.5-ish months, and yeah, I'm excited to share that birth with everyone. Then hopefully I won't wait, nearly 3 years to get this up for that baby. So yes, thank you all so much for listening. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, feel free to subscribe if you feel so inclined, and I will see everyone later. Bye!